This is TWiT.
So Apple loses in the Supreme Court, but as everybody was quick to point out, it doesn't really mean a thing.
Well, it was interesting because. Go ahead, Andy. Sorry.
I'll just say, well, it just means that instead of it means that a lawsuit that could possibly change how they do business gets to go forward. If it's 10 steps to Apple having to totally change all of their App Store policies, we are now on step 2, maybe 3, but that is arguably 2 numbers greater than 1.
It was kind of a firewall. Apple was hoping they could get rid of the whole threat of a class action lawsuit over the Apple Store's monopoly by just saying, well, customers of the Apple Store don't have standing. They can't sue us, according to Illinois Brick.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think Ben Thompson had a really good analysis on this, which he is wont to do. But this to me is sort of like maybe one of the best things that could have happened to Apple. And I say that only because that law was supposed to prevent dual plaintiffs from getting damages based on the same lawsuit. So in this case, it was meant to prevent developers from suing Apple and customers from suing Apple, both for the same thing. And the US has traditionally looked at lowest price as the key for regulation, where the EU looks at things like competition regardless of price. And in this case, the thesis is that because of Apple's control of the App Store, app prices are artificially high, which whenever you say that, I just imagine every developer in the world screaming and crying because if anything, Apple's been accused of absolutely destroying the value of applications. But what this means is that it doesn't have anything to do with the merits of the case. It just means that the people involved, the customers involved, can sue Apple, but they still have a terrible case. There's a case maybe that developers can sue Apple, and there's a case that can be made about antitrust that has nothing to do with this. This looks like the worst possible antitrust case from Apple is now allowed to go forward based on a bad reading of an existing law that's designed to prevent just that, which is sort of the ultimate irony at the same time.
So just to be clear, the Supreme Court did not rule whether the App Store is a monopoly.
Yes.
There are no consequences, no damages to Apple. It just means that a lawsuit about that can go forward. And Apple has ample time, A, to defend that lawsuit, which probably will take years, and B, to, if it wants to, and I think this is what Ben Beharan said, there are lots of little changes they could make to the App Store that would make the whole thing moot.
But are they pricing based? Like the whole thing for me that makes this one silly is that it's based on the price of apps being too high when the price of apps is still trending towards zero. You know, you can make a lot of anti-competitive arguments, but pricing is a weird one.
Pricing is the silliest argument of all in this whole thing because the majority, not the majority. Let's say that a good portion of the apps are either free, which Apple takes no cut of. Obviously, there's no money to take a cut of, or they're 99 cents. So how is it that pricing is an issue here when apps cost 99 cents? I mean, I wrote yesterday that I don't think as consumers, we value the work that developers put into creating these apps. The customers these days value free and complain that 99 cents is too much, even if they find the app useful. And that to me is just craziness. I mean, from what I've seen over the years, and I've been doing this for 25, 26 years now, the price of apps is ridiculously low. So for somebody to say that Apple has a monopoly based on that is just ridiculous.
Yeah, but it still leaves them open to the idea that there is no way to sell an app there's no way to sell an app to iPhone users without giving Apple 30%. There is also, particularly in the EU, where it's not the users who are filing a class action suit, but the EU that is actually applying antitrust laws against Apple, saying that it's not correct for Apple to be selling a music service through their app store, but giving themselves better terms than they're giving Spotify or any other services that are sold through the app store. So this is there's still a lot, although everybody's very correct in saying that it's odd for users to file this suit as opposed to the actual aggrieved parties, i.e. the developers and the makers of competing services that compete with Apple, to bring the suit. It still reveals a big vulnerability for Apple. This is something that they probably in the next 3 to 5 years, they're going to have to they're probably going to have to proactively make an adjustment to how they deal with parts of their business just to make these lawsuits much, much harder to prosecute, if nothing else.
Yeah, and if people want to download apps from other sources, so from anywhere on the internet, what's going to happen is that there's going to be malicious apps and malicious code installed on phones that allows them to be hacked. Because what Apple does with the App Store is not just have a platform, but it's a safe and secure platform. So if you can go download apps from anywhere, which people will do, they're going to come back and, the headline is going to read, the headline won't read some stupid person downloaded an app from an insecure website, which, put a virus on their phone and they get hacked. The headline will read iPhone hacked. That's it. And then the EU will be screaming at Apple to protect its users. And people will be screaming to put software in place so that I don't get my phone hacked.
Well, what if Apple does what Android does, which is allow users to check a box that says, I'm going to get sideload stuff from third parties. I know I'm taking a risk. Google puts a big warning of the risks involved. And in fact, lately they've made it so that the switch is a one-time only. You switch it, download it, and it reverts back to the Play Store. What if they did something like that? I don't think that the Google environment, despite all the press, is significantly more risky than the Apple environment. Wouldn't that be a suitable way to get out of this?
I don't think so. I think that what will end up happening is that people will just scream at Apple. I mean, that's what's going to come out of it. People, I think, expect in Android and some of the other operating systems for different devices that, viruses and malware are a thing. With Apple, they don't. They figure that they're secure. They're secure because of the way that Apple distributes things. And they hold the developers to a certain standard of what the apps have to be.
Malware still leaks through. I honestly don't think that I feel any less secure using Android than I do Apple. And malware leaks through in both cases. Both companies take great steps to protect you.
I don't think that Google takes great steps to protect privacy and security. They take
privacy
great steps
maybe not, but security
absolutely can.
They absolutely do.
Come on.
The biggest. I would reply by saying, come on. They do app screening. They do proactive. They proactively screen apps that go in. The number of apps that have malware that come through the Play Store is minuscule compared to the perceived advantage of being able to sideload apps as your own priority. But the one thing we haven't spoken about is that if Apple were to allow non-App Store apps to be installed, the other problem is going to be piracy of commercial apps, which is another very, very big problem. But my position is that I do think that this is my phone. I've spent $1,000 for this phone. If I perceive a benefit to be able to sideload an app that is not on the App Store, that violates iTunes Store app policies, that should be my prerogative. I think that they have a responsibility to warn me that this might be a bad idea, particularly if I'm going to be getting this app from someone I don't know and can't really trust. But that really is my priority. The other thing is that this really is an issue. That if Apple has the ability to sell services through iOS apps, if Apple has the ability to break its own rules for developers, again, there are many, many benefits to users, but that also arguably and legally arguably creates a burden on the people that Apple is competing with through the App Store. So this is something that needs to be discussed and really needs to be settled out in the open, rather than Apple being able to claim this by fiat.